would be set aside for scholars. The mere existence of the library shaped the legacy Roosevelt bequeathed to his successors and historians in a substantive way. His plans perpetuated the presidential synthesis, in which American history is seen largely through the lens of presidential administrations. Roosevelt left his successors a model of a dynamic, activist presidency that could not be ignored. All subsequent presidents, especially liberal Democrats, have labored in the shadow of FDR. Their presidential accomplishments have been judged by the standards of the strong, charismatic national leadership that Roosevelt displayed in the fight, first against the Great Depression, then against the Axis powers in World War II. Nowhere was the standard set by Roosevelt more daunting for his successors than in his extraordinary achievements during his first 100 days in office. Taking the reins of government on March 4, 1933, when the banks were closed and the nation paralyzed, Roosevelt warned Americans that if Congress did not act decisively, he would ask it for broad executive power to wage war against the emergency, as great as the power that would be given to me if we were in fact invaded by a foreign foe. That passage drew the most sustained applause of the day. The cantankerous Congress, which had been gridlocked in bitter recrimination with the outgoing president, responded enthusiastically to Roosevelt's patriotic appeals. Congressmen laid aside previous divisions, discarded long-held principles, and grasped, both for themselves and for the executive, vast, often unspecified powers unheard of in peacetime. By June 16th, after 100 days of frenzied activity, 16 pieces of major legislation gave the federal government the power to decide which banks should or should not reopen, to regulate the stock exchange, to determine the gold value of the dollar, to prescribe minimum wages and prices, to pay farmers not to produce, to pay money to the unemployed, to plan and regenerate a whole river basin across 6 states, to spend billions of dollars on public works, and to underwrite credit for bankers, homeowners, and farmers. Presidents have been expected to follow FDR's lead. When in 1992 Bill Clinton was elected during a recession, it was predicted that he would, in his first 100 days, take a muscular Franklin Roosevelt-like approach to the slump. As Jimmy Carter's advisor, Stuart Eizenstat, noted, since FDR, the first 100 days of an administration have been closely watched as a sign of what can be expected over the course of the entire administration. The first 100 days of the New Deal have served as a model for future presidents of bold leadership and executive legislative harmony. Throughout his presidency, Lyndon B. Johnson consistently measured his record against that of his political hero, FDR. In April 1965, he pressed his congressional liaison man, Larry O'Brien, to jerk out every damn little bill you can and get them down here by the 12th, because on the 12th, you'll have the best 100 days, better than he did, if you'll just put out that propaganda that they've done more than they did in Roosevelt's 100 days. Even if the New York Times was right on April 24, 1993, when it announced that the 100 days test is, of course, fundamentally silly, most presidents have felt themselves held to account by it. Concerned that he would fail the test, Richard Nixon wrote in 1969, "In about 5 weeks, we will have completed 100 days since the inauguration. I would like to have this week a summary of the legislative proposals we have already sent to the Congress, and a hard analysis of what other legislative proposals will have been sent to the Congress for action before the 100-day period expires." He was certain that departments had not been working fast enough to meet this symbolic deadline. Aware that after 100 days, the dam against criticism comes crashing down, and 80 days have gone by already, he and his staff created a 100 Days group and proposed a first-quarter report that would get off the hook on quantity of legislation, being the first measure of success of the first 100 days. Even in 2006, the notion of a dynamic 100 days of legislative achievement was so beguiling that Speaker-elect Nancy Pelosi in November promised that the new Democratic majority would enact major parts of what it had promised in the midterm campaign, not merely in 100 days, but in